Welcome to the London Outlook for Tuesday, the 27th of February 2024. Starting off with the economic calendar, there are some red folder news events coming up in the New York session. However, they are not so significant that it will require us to consider closing positions prior to the New York session, and thus we'll touch on these New York events as we get closer to it. So, i.e., in the New York Outlook. Then, moving on to the 4-hour or daily charts. Perhaps let's start with a daily AGFX. Okay, so on the daily, what we can see is that we're now sitting with 5 daily consecutive bullish candles, and the likelihood of a bearish candle is extremely likely, and thus from a daily buyer's perspective we can only short, and that aligns pretty nicely with our narrative. Then moving on to a 4-hour chart, what we can see is again market structure is still confirmed bearish. We did, if you recall from yesterday's outlook on Friday last week, we did validate that the pullback phase primary leg was extended, and then we suggested that this was the best point to identify the last point of supply in support of this pullback phase. Because we are reacting to the pro-trend extreme, any counter trend longs will require support by this OB to then trade to the long side, in addition to requiring IRL being available to target potentially this high right here, and maybe even the ultimate swing high, although that's the less likely scenario, and the more likely scenario is actually that we push deeper down and actually take out the swing lower low in line with the bearish market structure. Having said all of that, currently I don't believe that this reaction is valid, because the reaction point at this point here was actually not validated under the pullback phase, and it's only on Friday that we actually validated the pullback phase. So this is currently the last most valid POI, because that's the POI that essentially broke the structure right here. And as you can see, having a POI right here doesn't make sense, because this structure point here hasn't been body broken. So having said all of that, the higher time frame narrative is highly supportive of shorts, and that the idea for long will only come into effect once we reach this pullback phase last point of supply. However, the pro-trend move is confirmed and is the ultimate more higher probability scenario, and thus even if we are in this pullback phase last point of supply, we can still short with the objective of reaching this void swing low. Having said all of that, moving on to the 5-minute, again just to add a note here that our daily bias from a consecutive candle perspective is only to short, and thus for that reason we will only consider to shorting to the downside. In addition, some other confluences we have for shorting is the fact that the Asia lows from Friday and yesterday remain unmitigated, and are thus likely obvious targets for the current day. In the current day, how am I going to approach the London outlook? Well, it's quite simple. I'll wait for the Asia high to be swept, and then I'll wait for either Frankfurt or London validation, subsequent to which I will take a short entry. If London creates a high of the day, then I'd be waiting for either New York session to validate why the London high of the day would hold, or alternatively, if New York puts in a high of the day, then I'll look for the 3:30 p.m. to be positive to the USD, to be in support of shorting GBPUSD. Having said all of that, that's pretty much the London outlook. I hope you have a good session, and we'll chat again for the New York outlook.